Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is MTA International USA Studios in Silver Spring, Maryland. My name is Ahmad Khan and I will be moderating today's discussion on Islam Ahmadiyya in America. Our esteemed panelists today are Brother Al-Haj Habeeb Shafeeq of Orlando and Brother Al-Haj Yaqub of Milwaukee. Brother Al-Haj Habeeb Shafeeq served in the education industry as social services professional, social services consultant. He acquired his master's in public administration. He worked in city government planning, special projects planning. He's a world traveler. His passion is community service and education. And in all his off time, he loves to cook and garden.
Thank you very much.
Brother Al-Haj Yaqub served in the military in the Vietnam era. He served as an executive management in proprietary schools, worked in the nonprofit for 10 years, quality control in the American Society of Mechanical Engineers as a code inspector. He's a writer, he's a thinker, he is a scholar.
Thank you so much.
In the previous episode, we examined the decade of the 1970s and the progress of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in America. And the conclusion that we reached was that the reason the quality of our message stayed constant was that guiding light of Khilafat. And we're going to run with that message in this particular episode and examine the decade of the 1980s and see the further progress of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. With that, I would like to go to Brother Habeeb. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III, may Allah's mercy be on him, last visited the United States in 1980. Can you describe in your own words and experiences on what the mood was like at the time amongst the membership of the Jewish Jamaat on the passing away of Hazur in 1982 of June?
Yeah, as a colloquialism, this was Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III redo. The first one was exciting. We didn't know what to expect, and we were more really focused on our tasks, our duties, and not making a whole lot of mistakes and that kind of thing. The second tour in 1980, we knew what to expect from him. We knew about his personality and everything, and it was a great deal of exuberance and excitement. And we had 4 years. We had 4 good years to think about it, to plan on it, to garner resources, both personal and other resources. So it created an extraordinary excitement, but we didn't feel anymore like novices. We felt like this is a repeat, this is the redo, and anything we did wrong, we were going to not do that again, and everything we did right, we wanted to exceed that.
You had given us of your experiences of seeing your father when second Khalifa had passed away.
Yes.
Were your sentiments in a similar manner or expressed in different manner, or how did you express them?
When we got the news that Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salas had passed away, he was like our father. He was like the most endearing father that you can imagine. And it was extremely difficult for us. We didn't know what to think or what to expect. I remember thinking back, as I remember in a previous episode, about how my father was, and for me, I didn't want my children at the time to see that part of me, but it was a very, very solemn and surreal moment, and it seemed like it didn't last that long, because as quickly as we got the news that he had passed, Allah Ta'ala had comforted our hearts, gave us this ease after hardship, and then not only was there a 4th Khalifa, but it was a person that we knew who spent time with us. So it was extraordinary.
After experiencing 2 transitions,
yes,
the second Khalifa and the
3rd Khalifa.
Third Khalifa, it gave you that perspective that the Khilafat is continuous
yes.
and strong. It will move
yes.
on. The next question kind of is attached to this, and I want to give this to Brother Yaqub, is that And then there was the election, which is immediately after the passing away, and Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, may Allah's mercy be on him, was elected right afterwards.
Yes.
Right.
How did the U.S. Ahmadiyya Muslim community come together during this time of transition and maybe uncertainty?
Sure. I want to underline something that Haji Habeeb said, and that is that we knew him. We knew Mirza Tahir Ahmad before that he was the caliph, and people had a personal relationship with him. When he became the Khalifa, we felt as if that we knew what to expect. Now, Khalifatul Masih, Mirza Tahir Ahmad, was an intense individual.
He was very engaging.
He was personable. He would come and talk to you. He was outgoing. He was knowledgeable. He was always sharing things with people concerning knowledge. And we did not think that he being the Khalifa, that any of that would diminish. If anything,
yes,
it would
that's a good
increase.
Point, yes.
And and for that reason, really, there was no uncertainty concerning the transition from one man to another, him being the Khalifa of the times. So we felt relieved, felt assured,
yes,
and we felt that we could continue on. We didn't know what his programs were going to be, but we know that they were going to be engaged.
You had a solid foundation already for what Khilafat is going to be because
Exactly. Yeah.
of the experience and trust
yes,
and that repeatability test.
Right.
yes.
That once
Right.
the thing is, it's going to repeat itself to be what it is.
Very definitely.
We had no doubt we were in good hands. No doubt.
I want to come to a tragic incident that happened in 1983, Detroit.
Yes.
And this was of a exemplary Ahmadi Muslim individual by the name of Dr. Muzaffar Shaheed, and I say that because he was martyred in 1983.
That's correct in Allah.
May Allah elevate his soul in the hereafter. And he loved outreach to propagate the message of Islam Ahmadiyya, which is what we have seen throughout all of the members that we have talked about in historical context.
That's correct.
How was this this martyrdom? How did it affect the whole U.S. community, Ahmadiyya Muslim community, in retrospect, Brother Yaqub?
We were at a loss in one respect because, you know, the American Ahmadiyya Muslim community is very small, and we know one another. And to have a person in Dr. Muzaffar, who was a preacher, to lose that individual was devastating to us. That was on the one hand. On the other hand is that this happened on our soil. It wasn't like it happened in Pakistan. It happened in America.
Yes.
And when it happened in America, instinctively, we wanted to know who did it, who was involved with it. And by working with the FBI and other sources, in terms of we may have become Muslims, but we didn't lose our connections out there. And we came to understand who these people were and where they lived, what their objectives were. And that set a different tone of security for us in the United States. Now, when I say set a different tone of security, you know, it's one thing for us to go to Pakistan and we see all the security apparatus in place. That's someone else's country. It's not our country. In America,
This brought home.
This brought everything right in front in our face, and it brought a different level of security that was not strange to us.
I wanted to read you a quote of the fourth Khalifa, may Allah's mercy be on him, about Dr. Muzaffar after his martyrdom.
Please, yes.
He said, should you see through insight, you will find that Muzaffar is still alive. And he's kind of referencing a Quranic verse in this respect.
Yes.
In fact, he attained an extended life. Peace be on you, and this is actually a revelation of the promised Messiah. Peace be on you, O Muzaffar. Peace be on you, O Muzaffar. Behind you are restlessly waiting thousands of Muzaffars to occupy your place. So it was a very powerful message given to consoling the community.
One of the things, this is a very solemn thing, just to take us back on that, but Haji Yaqub also can remember there was another set of emotions going on here. We had been declared non-Ahmadi now almost 8, 9, almost 10 years when this happened. The difference here is that in the United States we had redress. We could actually go to our government, we could go to officials, we could pursue and try to find those who are responsible. We didn't have, but when we were hearing this in Pakistan and other places, it brought into sharp contrast that our brothers in Pakistan and in other places don't have this kind of legal, social redress to go to bring perpetrators to justice. So it was bittersweet in that sense.
Yes. And when the Quran talks about that the martyrdom is not something that ends the life, it actually extends the life.
Yes.
It's talking about that his faith, the thing that he felt, or her, whoever, felt strong about, will reverberate through other people's hearts now.
Yes.
That he held to his convictions, and he was not fearful of them.
We did not have to shut down our emotions with Dr. Muzaffar, because here in America, though we were declared non-Muslim, we did not have to hide or shut down. So he continued to live, so to speak. So there's several layers of this interpretation of Khalifa Rabi.
If anything, the feeling that we had was we were Ahmadis then,
yes,
and we're Ahmadis now. And none of that diminished.
None of that diminished.
Which is the common theme that we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Right.
Brother Habeeb, I want to come to, and if you can kind of just explain, because of the background that you have in city planning and special projects planning.
Yes.
The question relates to an initiative that the fourth Khalifa, may Allah have mercy on him, started, was the construction of mosques in the U.S.
Yes.
So what sort of challenges, and it was not just a initiative, just construction of mosques, it was 5 large mosques in the United States.
Yes.
And then the point was to regularly start constructing mosques around the United States. So what sort of challenges were there in this massive project at that time, and how did this contribute to further success in the community?
Yes, I remember our Naib Amir, Brother Muzaffar, working extensively with Sahib Zara, Imam Ahmed Sahib, on a lot of this. And the thinking was not about money and resources, because Hazur said it, we knew Allah was going to provide that. What was among the challenges was going to these particular sites and communities, developing relationships with local city governments. And that's something that we hadn't had a whole lot of experience with. Imagine, you see Batur Rahman, okay? Batur Rahman, it looked like it grew out of the ground. Quite the contrary. It was
a lot of effort in that.
So not just the effort of building and construction, but relationship building with local people.
Communities. Saying
to them, look, we're this kind of Muslim, we're this. And
which always is the most difficult part to do.
This is the most difficult part. This is the most difficult part. So the biggest challenge, I think I remember, was not resources and construction and architectural and engineering stuff, which is challenging. I remember distinctly that the biggest challenges were local relationship building with city governments, coding and zoning, the minaret, what about this, and noise and parking, and what kind of Muslims are you? All of these were
How
challenges.
did the mosques play a success in further success of the community as a whole?
When they would meet our Khalifa at a groundbreaking ceremony, game over. He captured them, and they were in a swoon, and they knew our message of love for all, and it was just a matter now, and it was training for us pre 9/11 in my opinion.
I'd like to add something here about a mosque that we built in Glen Ellen, Illinois, and it was across the street from a church. And there was something that happened in the church where they could not use that building. And it was our community that went to them and said, we understand that you cannot use your building. We're offering you our mosque. You can come and worship there. Now, this was impacting on both communities, because now you're seeing a real manifestation of what Islam is going to do for this country and the type of a community that we are. And it's been a lasting relationship with the people who lived across the street, that church. So even after 9/11, that community came to us to support us, because we were in need at that time.
You kind of foreshadowed something that happened in the future, but there were growing sentiments against Islam at the time, and a book specifically written outside of the U.S. was by Salman Rushdie called Satanic Verses, and that was specifically coming against the Holy Prophet Muhammad's peace and blessings be upon him, and against Islam itself. And the community came together, along with the Khalifa had written a response to this as well. But the community came together and wrote a massive response to these allegations in the U.S. And I'll kind of give you that it wasn't just the sentiments by this person. Even President Reagan had said something that was, if I can get to that quotation, he, in Time magazine, was quoted to say that this was a religious war, and or quoting earlier that returning to the idea that the way to heaven, and they're specifically talking about Islam, returning to the idea that the way to heaven is to lose your life fighting the Christians or the Jews, that this is the only prerogative of a Muslim. So even the president had those kinds of sentiments at the time in the U.S. How did the community come together to respond to these allegations, and what was the method like, or it was the guidance of the Khalifa that led all of this effort?
We followed the Khalifa of the time, and it provided an opportunity for dialogue with people out there. Now, interestingly enough, this book had a greater impact in literary circles, and we were able to address that through the news media. But people that had a one-on-one contact with us, it was discussed in passing, but it wasn't anything that they really believed that we believed. As an article of faith or a part of our religion or anything like that. Like I said, it had a greater impact on literary circles than in religious circles.
The biggest thing here that I remember at that time is that it was less, as Haji Saab mentions, it's less about that content and more about this notion that somehow this author cannot express himself, and there are Muslims, this religion is so tyrannical and out of control that they seek to do two things: silence free speech and and threaten to assassinate and kill this person. This was the door that opened us.
I was gonna
This
mention that.
was the door that opened up
Because-
opportunity for us to explain our message, love for all,
Exactly.
and to clarify. This was it.
Salman Rushdie's book, when he wrote that, and the immediate response from Ayatollah Khomeini, who was of Iran, was to put a death edict on this person. And our response was to responded in arguments that he posted against.
So not only are we now flagged by the United States in the public, we're also now flagged by the Muslim world when our Khalifa is saying, when we broke, we were not in the same rank with Muslim thinking that this man should be treated this way. So we had two converging things going on here that gave us a marvelous opportunity to excel our message, and we did so under the leadership of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi. Ya Allah Ta'ala.
I want to come back to the community again, and we had a 1989 centenary celebration of the 100 years. It seemed like a very internal event, but at the same time it was external because we did show our celebration and our love for the community. How was the response by others, not just the media, but just other communities who were looking at us and saying, why are they celebrating this?
Well, I think for the most part, people were surprised that we were here 100 years. Beyond that, and we had events and we invited them to those events. They got a sense of who we were. But taking into consideration that the media itself thrive off of sensationalism. If it bleeds,
It leads.
it leads. And that's kind of the way the media took us at the time. So, but otherwise, I mean, it was a joyous occasion for us. But in terms of its lasting impact, that we were here 100 years, it was a historical footnote, and then they moved on. Because
In your own personal sentiments, what were your feelings in knowing that we have survived for 100 years?
For 100 years, well, it was the way it should be, that we were here 100 years. We also looked at realistically, what is the next 100 years going to bring us?
Yes.
And we were looking at it from that perspective more than anything else.
So it's always curious to know the progress of where it's going to go further. And it's the human nature to do that.
Right.
Because of already observing and experiencing, but also knowing that it has survived and the success is there.
Right.
So what kind of fruits will it bring us in the future?
In the future.
And by this time, we had almost 27 chapters of the Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya.
Yes.
So it's spreading to, the structure is already created in the past and everything is set. Habeeb Saab, can you kind of briefly describe these years of success and what kind of passion did the Khuddam have?
The passion in Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, I think I could best describe. It was always as if, when we were together, it was always if that we were planning, that we were getting ready to play a championship match, and everything was behind us and was with us. Every time we got together, there was electricity, there was excitement, and as I recall, Haji, you can help me. As I recall, most of the Ahmadis at the time seemed to be in that Khuddam range. And it was so many of us, and we had different styles, different flavors. And remember too, we had been to Jalsa Salana, Rabwa, and Qadian, so we brought that flavor back. I remember when about 4 or 5 of us, and maybe 3 of us were from Dayton. We were Khuddam, and we got a chance to stand guard with the flag in Qadian, to do a rotation with them. I wouldn't have traded it for Buckingham Palace or the White House. So there was the Majlis Qadam al-Ahmadiyyah at the time created a great deal of excitement because we felt that we were somehow the backbone
Coming
of
back
the
to
movement,
the backbone part of that, yeah.
of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and we've had youth and vitality.
So
It
the
was just
zeal
a great
came
time.
from the organization's unity, which is Khilafat again.
Right.
So coming back to the same message.
Right.
And our own strong sense now, brotherhood.
Yes.
Brotherhood was no longer something that was elusive for us. We were practicing real universal brotherhood.
So it was practicing what we preached.
Absolutely.
And we will end with that conclusion of this discussion. And it was fruitful to know the progress that we had, not in just terms of who we are as Ahmadi Muslims in America, but that we are interconnected throughout the world.
Yes.
We have, and we feel for each other in terms of even in sad situations like Dr. Muzaffar's. We come together, but we know that in the end, success comes from sticking to Khilafat. So with that, we will close, and you can find more in this information on this topic in this particular era at www.alislam.org/sunrise, or you can go to www.muslimsunrise.com. Thank you for joining us. This is MTA International USA Studios, Silver Spring, Maryland, on Islam Ahmadiyya in America. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.